You don't know the depths to which humanity can sink, my young friend, but I do. Over the centuries, I've seen hundreds of horrors that would blast your soul. Come, let me show you what mankind is really like. Here's your look at the NECA Toys Gargoyles Demona Ultimate Action Figure. Frozen in stone by day, flesh and blood winged warriors by night, awakening after 1,000 years, a band of powerful gargoyles find themselves transported to a time and place not their own, New York City. Here the misunderstood creatures battle modern-day barbarians and struggle to understand their strange new world. Gonna get down to the details on Demona in a moment. First, though, I'd like to thank the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample of the Disney's Gargoyles Ultimate Demona. We got to look at this review. Grabbing the tape measure just to see how tall the figure stands, and don't worry, we're going to bring in the other gargoyles where we've left off. But in the meantime, Demona stands 7 inches exactly. Get a load of that. Or the figure's going to be about 18 centimeters tall. And for those keeping tabs, will know that this is now the third gargoyle figure we're getting a chance to look at in this video, having already looked at Goliath, which I've still kept on the draped wings that come include with Bronx. And speaking of Bronx, we also had a look at Bronx also as well. Yeah, really liking this line quite a lot. One thing I did maybe mention briefly when we were talking maybe about Bronx was the fact that it seems when it comes to these figures that NECA Toys are churning out for the Gargoyles Ultimate line, that it seems like they're taking aspects of the cartoon and sort of modernizing just a little bit. I may have maybe touched base on that only slightly when we looked at Goliath, but Goliath's features are a lot sharper. And I noticed that, especially with Demona here, she has a little more of a realistic likeness to her body and her face, which isn't a bad thing at all. I kind of like that they've bridged the gap between how they look in the cartoon and how they're now looking here in plastic. In the series, Demona was voiced by actress Marina Sirtis. Star Trek fans would recognize that name right away as being Counselor Deanna Troi from Star Trek The Next Generation. But she isn't the only cast member from TNG that actually lended the voice to the Gargoyles cartoon. Jonathan Frakes, I'm sure many of you already know, did the voice of David Xanatos, the main big bad guy from the series. But also Michael Dorn, Star Trek's Worf, also lended his voice to be Coldstone. So there were a lot of actors and actresses where you could hear them in the series and know exactly that they were from, of course, Star Trek Next Generation. On to the accessories now that come included with Demona. The first thing that we'll have a look at is the figure comes included with the Grimorum Acanorum. That's a hard thing to say. It's basically a big book of spells. Unfortunately, though, I wish one spell was in place, and that was the thing that would fix the front closure of the book. The book, unfortunately, though, at least the front part of it broke right off. And I think the problem with it is the fact that there's a spine on the side that allows the book to be opened up. But it's opened further than actually the clasp on the front. What it all is basically there's just a little T-peg shape there on the back. And there was a little bit of glue that was just applied to the back of it. So what you're supposed to really be able to do is open up, kind of peel this away from the front. It clips to the front here. And then once it's far enough away, you just open up the book. It's fine in the sense that at least if I close the book up, I can always take the front closure here and just snap it around to the front of the book. But what I might just end up doing, obviously, is go back in with a little bit of glue, of like strong glue at least, to make sure that that's not going to come off again. I think just by the nature of the way they've designed it, you have to, again, lift it up and then open up the book. And if it's not far enough, or if you don't have enough far enough away from the book, it's probably just going to break it off the exact same way it broke off for me. No real harm necessarily to the book itself. And you can see like the pages on the inside of it look really fantastic. I think it's supposed to be this way. It might be even this way. I think it's supposed to be this way. But a nice looking book nonetheless. It can, though, fit into her hands. I actually did swap out one of the hands here on the side here to a more closed gripping hand. And actually the way that they've designed this hand, you can take then the page of the book, or the main side of the book, I suppose, and you can clip it into Demona's hand. So that's a nice way to displaying the figure. For right now, let's put that to the side. And I want to be careful, of course, that I make sure I put the front of this back on because I hate to really lose this. Again, it just clips into place, but I'm going to add a little bit of glue just to fix the problem altogether. So let's move that to the side. The figure also comes included with some series of swapped out hands. I guess, first of all, the figure comes included with some closed fists. Not the most exciting things, I admit. I mean, obviously, for me at least, I don't really usually display my figures with closed fists, but the options are always available there as well, and I appreciate the fact that they include always these extra hands. The figure also comes included with a trigger firing hand for the 2 included weapons that she wields. And this is, again, one that's actually lined up perfectly with the trigger of the gun. Nice detail. I do also like the way that they've taken the time to paint the nails. Again, she doesn't have 4 digits and a thumb. She only has 3 and a thumb, but still either way, I like the way they painted the nails. The figure also comes included with this hand, which happened to be the hand I did end up swapping out for this hand to hold the book. Before we get to actually the wings and the swappable faceplate, she actually has a faceplate rather than a whole entire head, something that was very done differently when it came to Gargoyles Goliath. But she does also come included with a couple of guns. I do really like the look of these guns quite a lot. I mean, you could freeze and pause any one of the episodes and probably see her wielding one of these. I think, in fact, when she betrays the Gargoyles initially, it may have been this gun. I don't think it was this one, but either way, they're colored exactly the same way. Sort of more of a swamp green color for the barrel of the gun, and then some additional silver accents, with the majority of the gun being a very nice blue, in fact. I really like the look of these. Again, you can take the trigger firing hand, and you just kind of line it up here. The plastic that they've used for the hands at least is soft enough, so it's not too hard of a time to get it at least around the trigger. It's maybe a little harder of a time to attach it onto her hands. So we're going to go ahead and pick the figure up right now. Just wiggle the hand and remove the post from the forearm. It may take a few passes to do this. Just wiggle it off carefully. The last thing you really would want to do is break the peg. There we go. And then from there, go ahead and take the hand. Now you can either already have the hand attached to the gun. I find that's an easier thing to do, honestly. And then with the head the angled the way it is, she can actually look as if she's looking through the scope. It's a really nice touch. Might be the way I end up displaying the figure, in fact, on the shelf. So let's go ahead and remove the gun for right now. Just put that to the side. I did already mention the fact that the figure comes included with a swappable faceplate. I guess we'll get to that more in a moment. But the figure also comes included with the wings. Now, the wings are very similar to the ones we already got with Goliath. They're kind of made of a more harder plastic, which isn't so bad here. But when it comes to actually hinging the joint back and forth, you'll hear, again, a very uncomforting snap. Again, I just don't want to do that. This, though, attaches onto the back of the figure's body. She has very long hair, so you kind of have to move the head and hair out of the way. And then from there, you're just going to attach these. If you look on the end of it, they've actually got kind of like a forked prong. When you plug it in place, I don't know how often you may want to do this. You'll plug them in, and they stay securely enough, but I don't know how often I would want to remove these wings. Now, these are the only wings that are available here with Demona. She doesn't come with like the cape wings that we got later on with Bronx. I don't know if at some point they're going to be planning to release additional wings for Demona, or if these are the only wings that she's ever going to get. But you'll see what I mean. Like, the figure does give, well, there are swivelable hinges on her wings, but to move the wings down, see how that's a very uneasy sound, how it snaps when you're moving the wings back and forth. I'm sure it's just for the way the plastic that they end up using for the wings, but still, part of me really doesn't like the idea of ever really moving. They move fine and good up and down, but just to kind of move them in towards the figure, I feel like they snap every single time. It's very uncomforting. She does have also a tail to help stabilize the figure because, of course, with the wings being on the back of the figure's body, she's going to have a harder time to stand. But because of the actual tail that you attach on the back of the figure's body, and because the tail is a wire frame, it does add sort of a third leg, a stabilizing tripod leg, to help stabilize the figure. The other thing that the figure also comes included with as well is a swappable faceplate. Depending on how you would like to have the look for Demona, she comes with either the angrier expression with the red eyes, which I love the look of this head sculpt. I like the way that they've actually taken the pupils and made them kind of more of a pinkish color and transitioned it out to a more darker red around the sockets of the eyes. Now, there's this defaulted head sculpt, which I think most people would probably end up displaying the figure with, but if you prefer to have a more angrier expression for Demona, there's this option as well. Both of them do have earrings already attached to the lobes of the ears. Careful, though, while removing this faceplate, because it's lodged so far down into the plastic tray. When you pull this out, just make sure that you're actually pulling it out where it doesn't snag onto those earrings, because I'm sure they would break off. To change out the head, you actually don't even, to change the faceplate off, you don't even have to remove the head at all. Simply just kind of get your finger around there. And what you'll want to do, this may have been even easier to do with the wings removed, you're just going to detach it. See, there's 2 holes on the back, and then there's 2 pegs. You're just going to remove it like that, and then you're going to take the swapped out faceplate and line everything back up and plug it in place. Now, you may want to just, get it underneath the hair bangs here, and then push it against those 2 holes, and then you've got the angry expression for Demona. I think for right now, at least, I probably would end up displaying her, I think, with the more neutral expression, just again to bring back in and show you guys what that looks like. Paint is so good on both these heads. I know initially I did say Bronx was my favorite. Well, he is still my favorite gargoyle, but Demona might actually take the slot for my favorite gargoyle figure so far. As for the rest of the figure's body, She does have, again, the blue skin body, and she also has the additional bracelet there on the bicep. She also does have one loose bracelet down below by the ankle. This seems still to be plastic, and it's attached. Well, it isn't really even attached either. It looks like what they probably have done, you can see right there, there's a cut in the bracelet itself, and they would have then just, likely, I'm sure they probably would have just fitted over top of the calf before they attached onto the feet. Detail, though, wise, sticking with this head sculpt, this is the Screaming Again Demona head sculpt. And I love the sculpting of the hair. The hair itself, as you can see, individual, well, groupings of strands. They're all made of a softer plastic, and they've been painted this really dark color. It's actually lighter here to the top, and it gets progressively darker as it gets down to the bottom of the hair. It's a soft enough plastic, but it's still obviously going to get in the way when it comes to moving her around, especially when you've got the wings obviously in place. As for the lower half of her body, she has, again, like that sort of belly top rag that she has draped around the front of her chest. It does expose, obviously, her midriff, but what we get, at least of the material, is nicely painted. It looks like it probably would have started as a darker brown, and they probably would have painted the beige over top of it. There's a few little rips on the top. There's a few little tears down below, but it's a nice looking top the way that she has in the series. Matching to that, she also does have herself a loincloth. It's attached by a belt, but it's a softer plastic that they would have used, and it's soft also on the back here, where they've split it obviously in the middle to allow for the tail to attach into the back. The tail actually just attaches by a peg, plug it in place, and because it's a wire frame, you can then adjust it to where you want to have it. Nothing really happening here from the lower end of things. I mean, it looks like they probably would have just used the blue plastic. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot of paint happening here, but it's all in all a nice looking figure. For the articulation on Demona, starting first with her head sculpt, I already mentioned the fact that with her hair being long like this, it's going to cause a little harder time to get her head to rotate, especially if it's already hitting the wing. So you may want to just bring the hair back a little bit so you can actually have full access to the rotation that the ball joint gives you. Head does rotate back and forth, it does look up, and it does look down, and it does also rock back and forth as well. Obviously, on the back of the wings, the plug in the way that they are, allow the wings to rotate up. You can have them up like this, or you can have them rotating down. I noticed the further the wings go up, a little looser they actually sit on the figure's body. And actually, just leaving it like this, if we had a few, like 10 minutes or so, you probably would notice that the wing just starts to droop a little bit. Just because of the way that the hinge joint is, it's really having to rely on holding all the weight of the wings, which I don't know if we really got the chance to look at how the texturing of the wings turned out. Really like the additional use of the purple that they've added in here as well. It really does pop when you've got the blue outlining there of the frame of her arm, or her wing arm, I suppose. But it's a really nice textured and detailed wing. Then for her arms do come out not quite at 90 degrees. They actually come out just a little less than that. But you can take the arms and rotate them all the way around. Just be careful of the wings, whatever you do. She does have a swivel at the bicep. The figure possesses also a double hinge on the elbow, and the hands rotate all the way around, whatever hands you decide to use her with. As for the upper torso, just actually concealed nicely, I have to say, as well, as the way they've hidden the ball joint for her upper torso. It's just below the ragged top that she wears. It does allow the torso to go down, up, and also can rock back and forth as well. For the legs seem to be relying once again on ball joints. You can split the legs as far as this. You can bring them forward, you can bring them back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh. In this case, again, she has a double hinge on the knee, but it's really tight on this knee. It wasn't as tight on this side, so I may have to just heat this up just a little bit. And then she has the articulation again, where it counts in her ankle. You can not only hinge it up and down, only by just a little bit though. You can rock it back and forth, and the figure does also have toe articulation, similar to Goliath we looked at before. The toe articulation also gives you also a swivel at the toes there as well. But the big thing that really helps this figure to stand, especially when you've got the wings on the back of the figure's body, is the tail. It's sort of in the same way that a xenomorph works. Because of the tail being the way that it is, and being a wire frame, it really helps to stabilize the figure. Let's just bring the wings maybe just down a little bit here. Yeah, all in all, I really like Demona. Demona is my favorite figure. Let's just get her to stand here. My favorite figure from the Gargoyles series. I want to say Goliath. But just speaking of which, bringing back in Goliath, the only thing I really wish that this figure could have had is something now that Goliath has. And that's, of course, the relaxed pair of wings that would have come included then with Bronx. I don't know if maybe at some point they're going to be planning to release, maybe along with one of the other gargoyle figures, a slightly smaller gargoyle figure, maybe they'll include the wings, the relaxed wings for, of course, Demona. But I can't imagine they're probably going to be doing that every single time. Not with every release or every subsequent release. They're going to give you the wings then for this figure. I do wish that she could have had the relaxed wings like we got here with Goliath, but still a nice looking figure, Demona. And here for the final looks of the Gargoyles Demona Ultimate figure. I've got the figure displayed with blaster in hand, and this can actually be successfully accomplished by not only the double hinges that they've given the figure in both her arms, but also with the scope. It lines up perfectly to her face. Whether you decide to use this face sculpt or you want to default it back to the neutral expression that she comes included with, it's a really hard argument to be made as to which head is better. I do like the anger expression, but part of me almost wants just to display her with the neutral expression because I think it represents Demona the best. Now, when it comes to certainly the engineering on this figure, it has been improved from what we got with Goliath before. You know, looking at Goliath and now looking at how they handled Demona, I have to wonder if they could have used a faceplate similar to Demona's for Goliath's. Because we remember when we had a look at Goliath, everything really about his head seemed to be the same except for the facial expression that he had. They probably could have done something very similar to what they did here with Demona and had not just a complete head sculpt as something you'd have to pop off the ball joint, but instead just replace the faceplate. And I think that's so smart, and I would love to see them use that same sort of engineering with future figures moving forward. Not just Gargoyles, but other figures that NECA is known for doing. When it comes to the detailing of this figure, it's top-notch. In fact, it's one of the best figures I've seen for the Gargoyles line, and I know we're only 3 figures in, and I know the guy behind the camera is a little behind on schedule when it comes to looking at this line, but it seems like every figure that we're looking at here on this channel get better and better. While I'm still a big fan of Bronx, and he'll always be my favorite Gargoyle, I have to say from a figure standpoint, Demona is my favorite of what we've gotten so far from NECA. And again, we're not just stopping with Demona. There's going to be a lot more Gargoyle figures that we're going to be looking at here on this channel. Well detailed, well articulated. If you can overlook the fact that, again, this figure only has the widespread wings, I would love, again, to have seen this one with more relaxed wings also included. But you never know. That might be something that they could always tack on as an accessory pack, maybe for the Gargoyles line as well. Big thank you once again to the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide this sample of the Gargoyles Ultimate Demona that we could have the chance to have a look at in this review. What do you guys think of this figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. And now, seeing as we're a little later into the game, have you guys even been collecting the Gargoyles Ultimate figures? And if you have, which ones do you have in your collection? And even if you don't, which is your favorite figure that you've seen so far of the Gargoyles line? Let me know down below in the comments section. If you guys enjoyed this video, want to hit with a like. But if you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and on board to still see more, make sure you hit, if you haven't already hit, that is, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and that you're also turning on the bell notification. It's going to definitely be a lot more NECA reviews coming your way. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.